Welcome, everyone, to this briefing brought to you by the Israel Defense and Security Forum, IDSF. IDSF is a leading Israeli organization advocating for strong national security to defend Israel. It's a great pleasure to be joined today by the founder and chairman of IDSF, Brigadier General Amir Avivi. General, thank you so much for joining again.
My pleasure, Moshe.
General, every time you come on, there is just so much to cover from what's happening in the U.S., what's happening with the Houthis, of course, with Iran, and on the home front. So why don't we just jump in and share with us what you can?
So we know that Prime Minister Netanyahu is in Washington now, meeting with the president. I think it was very important for the president not to have these discussions on the phone, but in a private meeting. And this is something that can really emphasize what are the kind of discussions they're going to have. So important that it cannot be done on the phone. So one obvious thing that is more related to economy and less to the war is, of course, the issue of tariffs. Israel exports a lot to the US, and imposing a 17% tariff is not good for the Israeli economy. So Prime Minister Netanyahu is the first leader meeting with President Trump and trying to fix this trade agreement. We have had since 1985 a free trade agreement between the countries, but as time went by, Israel put tariffs mainly on agriculture, and just before the decisions Trump took, we took the tariffs to zero. So now we have to work it out and really make sure that both economies enjoy free trade with no tariffs, and I hope Netanyahu will be successful in this sense in the meeting. Obviously, there is an in-depth discussion about the hostages and how to release them. Israel is putting a lot of effort in the attempt to release the hostages before Pesach in the coming weeks, and we'll see where this is going. It's hard to predict. Also, of course, the plans for a full-scale attack in Gaza, if we don't manage at this stage to release the hostages. And we are seeing the US amassing forces in the Middle East, enhancing the pressure on Iran, attacking constantly the Houthis, including attacks with the strategic bombers. So the pressure on the Houthis is amounting every day. And I'm hoping that we'll see meaningful results talking about the Houthis, because they have been shooting endless amount of drones and the ballistic missiles on Israel. And we really need to make sure that this organization is destroyed, or at least the capabilities diminished dramatically in a way that they don't pose a threat on the Red Sea, on ships, and of course on Israel. So definitely a lot going on, very dramatic days, a lot of coordination that are being done between the US and Israel behind the scenes to deal with all the challenges. There are discussions also about how to keep Turkey from going into Syria. We don't want to see a direct confrontation between Israel and Turkey. Turkey is trying to build bases inside Syria to train Julani forces. It's something Israel cannot accept, and we see the IDF attacking constantly these bases, preventing any kind of buildup. But we need to see that these attacks don't become a direct clash between Israel and Turkey, and I'm sure that this is also something that is being discussed. In the north, we set a goal to bring back all the citizens safely back home. So far, 60% of the citizens of the north have returned home. Many of them are waiting until the summer because the kids are in school. They don't want to change schools in the middle of the year. So we're expecting to see by July or end of June most of the citizens back north. There is a lot of work to do to rebuild the towns, especially the town of Metula. There are some towns that we see like 90% of the people that came back, like Shlomi, for example, but less people in Kiryat Shmona. So the average is 60%, and the government has a lot to do. The government put a lot of money in really rebuilding the north, but it's a process, and we continue to see the IDF attacking constantly Hezbollah positions and operatives in Lebanon, and we see the administration sending a very clear message to Lebanon: Hezbollah needs to be dismantled as a terror organization, and all the weapons needs to be seized and in control of the Lebanese government. And I think that Hezbollah has been weakened dramatically, and if we continue imposing the ceasefire and getting rid of any terrorist that is trying to rebuild, we'll move steadily towards a completely different reality in Lebanon. Okay.
Thank you, General, for that overview of what's going on. If we could just go back to what you mentioned with regards to the Prime Minister's trip to DC. The past few days have been very dramatic for the world economy with the tariffs. And the fact that of any world leader or any issue to grapple with, the Prime Minister has FaceTime with the President at this moment when I'm sure there are so many different people around the world vying for that attention. What do you think that says about the Israel-US relationship and the extent to which Israel will come out on top on all of these issues?
So obviously the relationship between President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu are very, very close. I think President Trump has a lot of appreciation to Prime Minister Netanyahu experience and also his positioning in the globe. And it comes as no surprise that he's the first leader that visits the US after all these tariffs and the economy in the world shaken. And I think that we'll see in the coming months things stabilizing and the countries reaching agreements with the US. We have to remember that the US for long has created a reality where the local production is being hurt by the fact that on one hand the US didn't put tariffs, and on the other hand other countries did. So there was a growing reality of more and more export into the US, and import, into the US, and less export of the US. And obviously this hurts the US economy, and we brought the economy to a reality that the debt of the US is huge. It's 125% of the GDP, just to compare it to Israel, for example. With the war and everything, with all the money that Israel spent in this war, our debt is 70%, even less than 70% to GDP. So I think that at the moment President Trump is shaking the whole world, but the question is this going to balance again in the coming months, or is this going to create chaos? I think it's going to balance, but we don't know. We'll see. So I think that for President Trump, this meeting with Netanyahu is dramatic because the kind of agreement the US will achieve with Israel will be a message to the whole globe what kind of agreements they can get, providing that they take down the tariffs and encourage fair trading between the US and the other countries.
And given the instability right now on the economic front, is this the time you think that Israel and the U.S. would partner on a major military action against the Iranian nuclear program, or maybe because of the economy right now, it's a reason for the U.S. to not want to rush into a war?
No, I think that when we talk about Iran, at the end of the day, the big question is how fast they are moving towards nuclear capabilities. It's not something that can be postponed. It's better to deal with all these things now, and then following that, see a process of stabilization and not push it later on and have more and more crises. So I think that there is a clear message to Iran. You have a certain window to dismantle your nuclear sites. If you don't do that, there will be a military attack on these installations. And this is moving steadily, and I'm sure there are in-depth discussions between President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu about these issues. For Netanyahu, this is the number one issue above all other. Nuclear Iran is a real existential threat to Israel. It's not an option. And therefore, I'm sure that this is the top priority. But of course, there are also discussions about the hostages and the overall Gaza situation, Lebanon, Turkey, and the tariffs. So a lot of things to discuss.
For sure. And if we can maybe shift the conversation to back home in Israel, what can you share with us in terms of what's happening on the home front with the Shin Bet and all of these kind of internal issues that Israel's struggling with?
So yes, it's amazing to see that although we are in the middle of a war and we're supposed to really be focused on that, we find ourselves dealing with internal issues and a lot of issues lately with the Shin Bet. The government decided to replace the head of Shin Bet, but he seems unwilling to leave the position, which is pretty crazy, I would say. He's under the government, and the government has the right to decide who they want as the head of Shin Bet. And following that, this week, the press released some talks between the police in Judah and Samaria and the head in the Shin Bet in charge of it's called like a Jewish division, which is a terrible name. A guy that is responsible for looking after insurgency or terror among Jews. And the way he was talking, I would say, was almost anti-Semitic. Really attacking all the settlers in Judah and Samaria, saying that they need to be arrested even without proof of anything done, thrown into the jail with rats. And this created a lot of anger. And I think indeed we've seen in the Shin Bet in the last few years the tendency, instead of really focusing on our enemies, on Hamas, blaming Jews for the problems with Hamas, and portraying a reality that is portrayed mostly by our enemies, saying that the core issue is us, we're the problem, not our enemies. So following this really talks, the head of the Jewish division in the Shin Bet said, okay, I'm leaving office at the moment until this is investigated. And then the head of Shin Bet said, I will investigate it. But this is its policy. And we know that there were many arrests that were done with no proof of any crime. And I think that the Israeli society, a big part of it is feeling that that the law is not equal for everybody in Israel. That if you come from the right wing or if you're a settler, the law will treat you completely differently and much more harshly than if you belong to the liberal left or the elite of Israel in the many years at the beginning of the country. And this is getting people really, really frustrated. I think that one of the most basic things in democracy is that things are done according to the law, is that everybody is equal, and the law is imposed in an equal way for all the society, something that seems to not really happen in Israel. And this is part of the changes that are needed in the country. We saw this week my good friend Zvika Klein on the Jerusalem Post, journalist being interrogated in a way you don't expect to interrogate reporters. And for him, it was very, very traumatic. He was interviewed on Channel 12 and started crying in the middle of the interview. It was very clear that he's in a big trauma when he was just doing his work as a journalist. We had the pleasure last year to do a big event with the Jerusalem Post in New York, and I got to know him personally, an amazing guy. It was very sad to see this kind of behavior. And I think it's very obvious that things need to change.
General, I know that one of the major focuses of a Bitronistim of IDSF in Israel is to build a grassroots movement, and now we are 50,000 strong. And through that grassroots movement, we build unity across Israel because it's people who stand together from all different walks of life, unified over issues that they agree upon for national security. But short of joining IDSF, which might be the solution, how do we bring unity to Israel? You know, the more days, weeks, months, years that pass from October 7th, it seems like the more we are unraveling. You know, just this morning I was in Jerusalem driving past the Prime Minister's house, and you had these protests in all their vigor happening. How do we make sure, how do we bring back the unity? Do you have that magic solution for us?
Yeah, I think it's really all about our shared values. It's about really connecting three pillars that are very important. First and foremost, it's about our Jewish Zionist values. This is what connects us. The reason why we all live in Israel is the common vision of our history, our heritage, coming back to the promised land. This is what Zionism is all about. The Jews coming to their ancestral homeland. And the moment you detach from Zionism and from core Jewish values, then you see people not united. It's very, very important that this is not about the question whether you keep Shabbat or not keep Shabbat. This is really about the deep connection and the understanding that we're a nation. We are one nation, having the sense of being part of something much, much bigger than you or anybody else. And this is something we need to invigorate, the Jewish values and Zionism. Second thing that I think bothers the society is the fact that not everybody serves the country. It's very, very important that all of us serve. It's needed for our national security. It's needed for everybody to feel that we're all doing this together, serving the country, protecting the country, and it's something that we need to solve. At the end of the day, everybody needs to serve in Israel. And I would say that even those who are studying Torah, and Torah is part of our national security. It kept Jews for 2,000 years alive. It's a big part of our ability to exist. I would like to see all these elite Torah studies in the Haredi communities, studying Torah on uniform in the army, and serving with everybody else. Everybody needs to serve. And the third thing is that we want to continue being really a happy nation with flourishing democracy and enjoying culture and high tech and traveling. And I believe we can combine all of that. I mean, I feel personally that I combine all of that. That I serve the country, that I'm deeply connected to my Jewish Zionist values, and I also enjoy life and really being part of a flourishing democracy. I think every Israeli citizen can connect these three things together, and if we do, we'll have a society that can really be successful and united. And the challenge, and I think that really the key issue, is focusing on the young generation. The young generation is very different from their grandfathers and mothers and even parents. And they're much more united, they're much more connected. And this is why it's so important to really educate them, and they're really open to listen. And this is why we're building pre-army programs. This is why we go to high schools. And the young generation look up to the officers of Israel. And when we mobilize thousands of officers to high schools, to pre-army programs, when we talk with the young generation on TikTok, on Instagram, on YouTube, and create content for them, and they engage, this is building a strong, resilient society. The process of uniting the country, it's a long-term process. It doesn't happen in a day. It is accelerated by the war, definitely, but it's a lot of grassroots work. And this is what we're doing, really working on the grassroots level to connect the society and say something that should be understood. National security is first and foremost about our national values. And it's not about right or left. What is needed to secure Israel for generations to come, what is our vision, it's something that we all need to connect to. And it's not really something that is only political. It's much bigger than politics. This is about vision. And I think that following that, this war will also build new leadership for Israel. I think that we'll see in a year and a half, a year, whenever it is, the next elections, we'll see the beginning of a new leadership emerging in Israel, a younger generation. It won't happen in a day. Leadership is not going to change completely in a day, but it is going to change gradually, because part of the ability to build new visions and connect the society is also building new leadership.
Brigadier General Amir Avivi, thank you for sharing all of that. I want to thank, of course, all of our viewers and supporters for tuning into this briefing, sharing your questions in the chat, to my email, and every other way you know how to get in your questions to help us guide these discussions and share with you what is most relevant. So thank you for joining us today. If you're watching on YouTube, please consider subscribing, liking, and sharing this video so we can continue sending the truth, sharing the truth about Israel to the world. We will be back with you tomorrow, 10 a.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. here in Israel. Until then, stay safe, stay strong. Take care, everyone.